Find out during the NFL Draft on ABC and ESPN Thursday, April 24th through Saturday, April 26th. Can't wait for the NFL Draft, and that is why NFL insider Jeremy Fowler is here with the files on a Saturday morning. Look, the Giants held that private workout for Shedeur Sanders in Boulder, Colorado on Thursday. What are you hearing about how the workout went?
Yeah, Shay, I was told it went well. I was told the Giants tried to put Sanders in adverse situations that you don't get in a comfortable pro day setting, try to see what he's made of, and that he passed those tests. But the Giants are on a 3-day quarterback cruise right now because they met with Sanders, then Alabama's Jalen Milroe yesterday. Today, Louisville's Tyler Shuck. So they will conduct those workouts and then reconvene just 6 days before the draft. Try to figure out their quarterback plan because they do have one. Even if they don't take one at number 3, they can sort of circle back, right? Maybe Sanders is available at some point in the first round. They could trade back in. You have quarterbacks like Milroe and Shuck that could be available early day 2, maybe even late round 1. And so they're trying to cover every basis. Certainly they've had good feedback on Sanders. I'm told he is in play, but with players like Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter potentially available at number 3, could be too hard to pass up on those guys.
The teammate situation, Shedeur Sanders, Travis Hunter, where will they go? But the two of them have both been linked to the Browns, ironically. What are you hearing about Cleveland's plan with the number 2 overall pick?
Well, Travis Hunter is definitely in major contention at that pick. I mean, we saw GM Andrew Berry compared him to Shohei Ohtani. He was sort of calling a shot there. That will be a hard player to pass up. Either he's saying that or he's trying to drum up a market for another team to come up and get Hunter at number 2 overall. But it's interesting, Shay, I talked to several teams in the top 10, and they're sort of split. Some of them still believe that Penn State pass rusher Abdul Carter will be in play for Cleveland as well because they could pair him with Myles Garrett, and then you could dominate on defense for years to come up front. So the momentum league-wide still seems to be leaning Hunter, but a little bit of Carter there as well. Shedeur Sanders has been under consideration for that pick all along. They have not made it yet. They're going to take this all the way down to Thursday, it appears.
Oh, this is going to get so interesting here. This is the time now. We're starting to hear the rumors, who's going who. We're inching closer and closer. Of course, the NFL Draft starts on Thursday. Jeremy Fowler will
answer. So that's why we bring in our senior NFL writer, Jeremy Fowler, and of course, NFL Draft analyst Matt Miller with us as well. Okay, so Jay Fowler, let me start with you because we know that Sanders had that workout for the Giants in Boulder this past week. What was the lasting impression he left with the G-Men?
So I'm told that process went smoothly, that head coach Brian Daboll likes to put quarterbacks in adverse situations in those settings away from their comfortable pro days, and that he passed those tests. Otherwise, the Giants are keeping everything really tight-lipped, top secret right now. They are on a 3-day quarterback cruise right now because they're also meeting with Louisville's Tyler Shuck today, working him out. Alabama's Jalen Milroe yesterday. So they wanted to get through those 3 sessions, reassess. They've essentially scoured the earth for quarterbacks at this point. But the feeling I get from around the league, talking to GMs in the top 10, they don't necessarily expect the Giants to go Shedeur Sanders at 3. But could they dip back into the first round for a quarterback? Could they go early day 2 for a quarterback? Certainly the expectation is they take one at some point. Meanwhile, if Sanders doesn't go 2 to the Browns or 3 to the Giants, he's in a bit of a precarious spot. Where does he land? Somewhere in the first round, certainly, but the range seems to be a little bit wide.
You know, that's interesting, Matt, because the Giants have 6 additional picks, especially when you're talking about rounds 2 through 3. If they pass on him in the first round, should they trade up, then let's say use some of those picks and get Sanders later in the first round of the draft? What do you think?
Absolutely, they should. I think that is the move. And I think that's why we're seeing them, as Jeremy said, they're on this quarterback tour right now. These are quarterbacks that are expected to go in the early second round. So they are guys that you would like to trade into the late first round to get the 5th-year option on. So I look at that and say, yeah, that is the way to go. If you can walk out of this draft with Abdul Carter, my number 1 overall player at pick number 3, and then you can trade back up into the late first round for Shedeur Sanders, I think that is a huge win for Brian Daboll. It's a huge win for the New York Giants. Now you have that rookie quarterback. You have the quarterback of the future, but there's not as much pressure to play him early on because he's not the number 3 pick. Now he's maybe the 26th or 27th pick. That's a much better situation for everyone involved.
You know, interesting, Jeremy, is that Jackson Dart surprisingly removed his name from the list of attendees now attending the draft. So now all you have is Cam Ward and Jalen Milroe, who will be really the only QBs there in Lambeau for the draft. What are we hearing about Dart and maybe him making it in the first round?
Yeah, Brian, it's funny. I've asked multiple teams, do you expect Jackson Dart to go and say the top 15 picks? And they all say the same thing. I don't expect it, but it wouldn't shock me either. So there is a lot of buzz around him, but where does he land is the issue. New Orleans Saints have done a lot of work on Dart, but picking number 9 would probably be a bit rich. Pittsburgh Steelers, the belief is that they like Jackson Dart as well, but they don't have a second-round pick. So a lot of balls in the air for Dart, but he is well-liked. He's going to go somewhere fairly high. And then you got Jalen Milroe, probably the most polarizing quarterback in the entire draft. High upside. So the expectation with him is that he could slide into the late first, but he's probably more of a day 2 pick at this point. I did speak with his quarterback coach, Jordan Palmer, who said that for the last year they've been working on fluidity of movements, connection to the ground, which he thinks will help his accuracy at the second level. He called him a big-time learner and an overachiever, which is what you want out of a quarterback.
Yeah, absolutely. Matt, what about Dart and Milroe? What do you think would be the biggest teams would fill their needs, you think, with those two quarterbacks?
Yeah, I mean, they're both incredibly talented. They're both able to get things done on the ground and through the air. When I look at Jackson Dart and think about what would be the best fit for him, it is that team we were just talking about, the New York Giants with Brian Daboll, with his ability to move guys around in the pocket. Davis is also a great quarterback developer. His time with Josh Allen, his time at the University of Alabama, he has been able to develop young quarterbacks. So for Jackson Dart, someone who has a ton of tools, I would love to see him with Brian Daboll. I had him going to the Rams in my last mock draft at number 26 overall. And when you think about Jalen Milroe, he's maybe the most electric runner in the entire draft class at any position, but he's going to need time to develop. I like him to the Pittsburgh Steelers. I would prefer him to go there in round 3. Unfortunately, I don't think he makes it that long for the Steelers. His name is one of the hottest in the league right now, but an offense, again, where he can sit and learn. The potential for him is the highest of any quarterback in this class, but he's going to need time to get some of that work done that Jeremy was mentioning, reworking those mechanics, learning how to be where his feet are a little bit better.
Yeah, by the way, folks, you can read more of Matt and Jordan's rejoint article on
Colorado. Let's go to college football, where the Buffaloes have holes to fill. The NFL draft is less than a week away, and the headliners include Colorado standouts Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter. But what remains in Boulder is head coach Deion Sanders, who is back to work after a 9-4 record last season and a loss in the Alamo Bowl. Turn the page now to 2025 as Colorado's first spring game kicks off in a couple of hours. Matt Berry has taken his talents from Augusta to Boulder, where he joins us from the altitude ahead of the Buffalo spring game. And Berry, the obvious question here is, how does Colorado and Deion Sanders move on from two players that are going to be at the top of the NFL draft in a few days?
Yeah, well, you don't. I mean, you don't move on from two top 10 picks. We were spending time with them yesterday, and it's 4,200 yards from Shedeur. He's going to be one of the top quarterbacks drafted, and then 1,200 yards receiving from Travis Hunter. And it's just hard to replicate and reproduce that production. And both of them are going to be in the NFL. They've taken this program to new heights. But, Shay, here's what I'll tell you. In terms of optimism for what they have coming in, they brought in Caden Salter, transfer from Liberty, played a lot of football. This true freshman kid, Juju Lewis, 5-star kid, flipped from USC to come play here with Pat Shermer in Colorado. They love the future of where this kid could be as an all-time quarterback. But in terms of right here, right now, you're losing a lot of offense. 3,300 yards from receivers, gone. 4,200 yards from Shedeur, gone. And so I'd say right now you're not looking to replace those guys, at least in year one, but you're going to have to build some stepping stones to get this place back to a 9-win team.
It's two players, but essentially three positions, which is a really odd thing to be in. Expectations now for Coach Prime in year 3, what are they?
I'd say if you look across the country, Shane, every college coach and every college program in the country, to me, the biggest storyline is here in Boulder, Colorado, for one simple reason. This is the first time Deion Sanders, Coach Prime, has been a head coach in his career without Shedeur, without Travis Hunter, and without Shiloh. These are three talented players that know how he works and the intricacies within the program. We are going to know in college football two things. One, what kind of program he's building here in Colorado without those three guys. And two, what kind of head coach is Coach Prime without Shedeur and without Travis? This isn't a knock on the guy. He's one of the most brilliant marketers in college football. He took a 4-win team into a 9-win team a year ago. But what is he building, and who is he as a head coach for the first time in his career without his two favorite players in Shedeur and Travis Hunter? And to me, that is absolutely fascinating because he has been the epicenter of college football coaching conversation, the epicenter of college football really in Colorado since he got here 2 years ago. Year 3, it's legitimately a reset for him. That talent is gone. Who is he building? What is he building for a program here in Boulder? And how can he replicate the success he started building a year ago? To me, it's fascinating. We're going to find out who he is, and what this program is coming this fall without Shedeur and Travis Hunter.
I mean, Deion Sanders, they were a win and some help away of going to the Big 12 championship game last year. They got the win. They didn't get some help. They were right there knocking on the door. Speaking of needing some help, I mentioned you were in Augusta at the Masters. Now you're there in Boulder. It is snowing today. Did you bring the parka? I mean, how are we preparing for such a weather change?
I drove in a snowstorm from Denver to Boulder yesterday, about 4 to 5 inches. I was just with azaleas and sun in Augusta, Georgia, and now I've got winter weather gear again for today's game with Holly Rowe and Dustin Dvorak. I'm not programmed to do stuff like this.
Let me tell you, I feel terrible for you. Let me tell you, I really do. I am going to sit here and think about how sorry I feel for you for a very long time. Matt Berry, enjoy the game.
Hey, welcome back to SportsCenter. The draft is in 6 days. Raiders have 9 picks, starting with 6 overall, and let's just say they need everything. But for a team that was forced to start 3 different quarterbacks that combined for a QBR of 40, maybe that seems like the best place to start. Vegas GM John Spytek on their approach.
This is the age-old question, right? Are we doing need or are we doing best player available? And my answer would be that it's a combination of both. Yes, we're going to make the best decision for the Raiders, and certainly we have to take into mind places that we feel like we're not as deep at certain positions. And also we have opportunities to add really good players too, whether we think we need that player or not. You know, my experience kind of is 2 things. If you start forcing players because you need them, you end up regretting that.
We love Ryan Clark so much that we would pay a king's ransom to have him on this show. And honestly, he looks like he's at a place where they might ask for one. RC, as we know, the Raiders need help literally everywhere. But what do you think they can do with that 6 overall pick that will be like an impact?
Well, I think the first thing, obviously, El, is Ashton Jeanty, who many have mocked to the Raiders. Their run game was putrid. They couldn't get anything going. Josh Jacobs leaves for Green Bay, and they couldn't even start an offense because there was no run game to lead into the play action. And he is one of the true, Ashton Jeanty is one of the true impact blue chip players in this draft. But also the run game suffered because of the offensive line. If 2 of those top offensive linemen, whether it's Will Campbell falls or the kid from Missouri falls, they're going to have to truly consider getting themselves a tackle that can protect Geno Smith. When your team is as bad as they were, you need to fill so many positions. But I agree with Spytek. Don't start drafting for need when there's an opportunity to pick the best player available.
They're going to need all of Genty's 2,600 rushing yards. A quiz for you. All right. The last time that the Raiders won a playoff game, the #1 grossing movie that year was Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers. Name that year.
06.
2002, my friend. 2002. I know. It's been a long time. You didn't get it right, but we'll still free you if you need. Blink if you need help. Are you good? All right. Ryan Clark.
I'm good. Thank you, my girl.
Thanks for joining us. All right, a walk down draft memory lane, shall we? Some of the biggest trades during the NFL draft didn't actually involve anyone being drafted that day, like in 1996. When the Rams dealt Jerome Bettis to the Steelers, the bus ended up rushing for over 10,000 yards over his 10 seasons in Pittsburgh and helped the Steelers to victory in Super Bowl 40 in his final game. How about when Randy Moss was traded from the Raiders to the Patriots in 07, and all the future Hall of Famer did in his first season in New England was set the NFL's single-season receiving touchdown record with 23, by the way, a record that still stands today. And finally, 3 years ago, Titans trade star wideout A.J. Brown to the Eagles. The former Ole Miss star, one of 3 players with 4,000 yards and 25 touchdown catches over the last 3 seasons, joining Tyreek Hill and CeeDee Lamb. Hey, as promised, we welcome back our senior NFL reporter, Jeremy Fowler. What's the buzz that you're hearing about? Maybe some trades we could see around the draft?
Could be some action with some star players. Let's start with Jalen Ramsey. The Miami Dolphins are shopping Ramsey, the star cornerback, as we speak. $21 million in guaranteed money in 2025. Makes this a little bit cost prohibitive for a lot of teams, but there should be a market. The setup they have with Ramsey is they're going to look into this, and then if they have some solidified teams that could make a potential deal, they will circle back with the player, make it happen. So nothing going on right now, but certainly closer to day 1 or day 2 to the draft, that could heat up. And the Dolphins at number 13 on the clock could certainly go defensive back to try to reshape that defensive back room. And you got Mark Andrews. This one's complicated because he's a legacy player of Baltimore. They love him there. Certainly they're open to him returning, but they've been non-committal recently about his future. He's got a $16.9 million cap hit. So something has to give here. Certainly they could keep him or even extend him. But meanwhile, you have teams like the Indianapolis Colts, a few others that are looking hard at tight ends in the draft. Maybe if they don't get their guy early, they could circle back with Baltimore, make a deal. Next, you have, flip it, we got Trey Hendrickson there with the Cincinnati Bengals. So this one's at a bit of a stalemate. No update, I'm told, on contract talks with the team. The Bengals want to re-sign him. Hendrickson wants to be there, but they're far apart in money and have been for a while. Meanwhile, the Bengals don't want to trade him, really. I mean, they've had a huge price tag that no team has been willing or able to meet at this point. So maybe the draft will create some urgency here. Meanwhile, Bengals picking 17th. Do they go edge rusher to really complicate matters and potentially give a headache to Hendrickson even more? Then you got Kirk Cousins. So the feeling I get from Atlanta is they're still not eager to make a move here because they've paid him all this money, $37 million in guarantees that he's locked in on. And they just don't really see the need to just take a measly day 3 pick to move him unless a team makes an enticing offer. Maybe the draft will create that, but they're willing to go through next week, keeping Cousins on the roster. Look, in June is when he has to report for minicamp, so there is some time. Maybe that's the next deadline if they do get past the draft. But Cleveland Browns look like they've moved on, taking Joe Flacco. There's just not a lot of momentum here with Atlanta and a deal for Cousins.
I mean, listen, he's already hamstrung them financially. He got a $10 million roster bonus because he was still on the roster the 5th day of the league year and a $40 million cap hit. But at least he can sort of swag surf. Thanks, Jay Fowl.
That's pretty good.
Sort of. NBA for now. Let's switch gears to the NFL, where last week we learned Saints quarterback Derek Carr is dealing with a shoulder injury that could jeopardize his 2025 season, prompting speculation about whether the Saints, who pick 9th in next week's draft, might select the quarterback with that pick, namely Shedeur Sanders, who's projected to still maybe be available there. The odds makers, they like the speculation. According to ESPN Bet, Shedeur Sanders is the favorite to land in that spot. New Orleans, by the way, has drafted a quarterback in each of the last 2 years, picking Spencer Rattler in 2024 and Jake Haener in 2023. We're going to stay right there with our senior NFL reporter, Jeremy Fowler. Jay Fowl, with all due respect to the odds makers, there are some teams that are picking before the Saints that are interested in Shedeur Sanders. Like, what are you hearing?
So, Elle, I'm told Shedeur Sanders is still under consideration to the Cleveland Browns at number 2 and the New York Giants at number 3. So the Browns, they like Shedeur Sanders. There's some love for him. He's been one of the players that they've thought about with that pick, but there's not a lot of momentum there league-wide. Most expect them to go Travis Hunter, with a little potential love there for Abdul Carter, the pass rusher, as well. And the feeling with the Giants is that they could just take whoever the Browns don't take out of Hunter and Carter. So that could leave Sanders in a precarious spot. Certainly the expectation is he'll go somewhere in the first round, but that range right now is pretty high. It seems anywhere from like 2 to maybe 21 to the Steelers. Does a team like Cleveland or New York, if they don't take him early, do they try to trade back into the first round? A lot of variables here for Shedeur Sanders. Meanwhile, you have the Saints sitting there at number 9. Clearly they need a quarterback and have done a lot of homework on that position, but the feeling right now I get is they might not go Sanders at number 9.
Okay, I love that you mentioned the Steelers, because it would probably be the worst case scenario in the Sanders house that he would fall all the way to 21, but certainly there could be some interest there, because they're sitting around waiting on Aaron Rodgers to make a decision. What's the latest you can tell us about their quarterback plans?
So the Steelers are staying with their plan because they feel like, and I talked to somebody there, that's like nothing really changed here because we have Mason Rudolph as that bridge quarterback, and then we've done a ton of homework on these quarterbacks in this draft, knowing that the Steelers entered this process thinking they would take a swing on a QB either this year or next year, which is considered a stronger quarterback class. Now, Rodgers, if he's available and signs with them, that gives them an extra year to wait on that process a little bit. But they're going to see how the board falls. If they don't take a quarterback at 21, certainly day 2 could be an option. There's several players that they like and have spent time with, done their homework on, all those fun things. But meanwhile, Elle, this is Aaron Rodgers' first foray into free agency in his 20-year career. We knew that this probably wasn't going to go all that smoothly.
Yeah, you mentioned the term wait, right? And the Steelers are historically very patient, but they've also lost 6 straight playoff games, which is the longest losing streak in team history. At some point, those towels are going to get real terrible. Jeremy Fowler coming back.
Joining us now is a man who has joined ESPN and has been nothing short of spectacular on linear television at the worldwide leader. Friend of the program, former Emmy winner for Good Morning Football, ladies and gentlemen, Peter Schrager.
Yay, Schrager!
How are you, Schrags?
I have so many thoughts. We could start with the Blade Runner, or we can go to remember that? That's what they called them.
Yeah, dude.
And then I have a quick Jack Sawyer story. I'm at the Combine, and I didn't go to any of the college football games. I watched him play, obviously, and I'm on the field with Sean Payton, who said he had never been on the field during Combine drills, but I was interviewing him for the NFL Network's coverage of the Combine. Mid-defensive drills, mid-drills, Jack Sawyer comes over with the firmest handshake you've ever seen. Mr. Peyton, Jack Sawyer, linebacker, Ohio State. Good to meet you. I said, okay, I want to draft this guy. What a move. What a move. I'm like, this kid's unbelievable.
He's a
That
dog,
was great.
too, Shregs. He was heralded as the next one, right, whenever he went to Ohio State, AJ, if I have this right?
Yeah, Columbus kid from the area. Yeah, he came in as the man for sure.
And then obviously
He
this
was
play
unbelievable.
cements Ohio State heading to the national championship right in front of our face. The speed, the wheels, the awareness, the heartbreak for Steve Sarkisian in the Texas Longhorns. Smart play by Jack to go shake Sean Payton's hand, look him right in the eye, and introduce himself. Let's talk about this time of year, Shregs. Feels like there's more question marks in this draft than ever that we have covered. Now, obviously, you've been around the game a lot longer than us. Is that an accurate assessment? I feel like nobody knows what the hell's happening, and then this Derek Carr news gets dropped on us within the last few days and adds a whole nother wrinkle. Are we looking at it the same way as you, Peter?
Makes it a really interesting draft. I wouldn't say it's rich with first, top tier blue chip prospects, but that makes it all the more, I guess, interesting when we get to Thursday. I gotta tell you, like, we're talking Shedeur Sanders all day on this network. I don't know where Shedeur Sanders goes. I don't have a certain team raising their hand saying, hey, if Shedeur falls, like, that's our place. And that's a prospect that we're talking about constantly. You go name by name, and really there's only two blue chip prospects across the board when I talk to these GMs, and that's Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter, and then Ashton Genty's one of those guys, but you wouldn't draft him likely in the top 3. Other than that, it's wide open. And I had a GM tell me, who Jacksonville takes at 5, you could easily see, at 17 or 18. After you get out of those top 3, it's not that it's a drop off, it's that it kind of plateaus, and it's, well, what do you need? What do you want? Who did you like? Which makes the draft all the more interesting. Last year, we knew there were quarterback hungry teams. You kind of match with who might go where, and I knew the top 3 was set, 9 days out. We're now 9 days out. Outside of thinking it goes Ward, Carter, Hunter, and some combo in the top 3, Pat, I could tell you with great confidence that I am not alone. Nobody knows where it goes from there. And really, what's so interesting is that after the one quarterback, Cam Ward, you've got a wide open list of possibilities as to the teams that are drafting quarterbacks, where they're drafting quarterbacks, and on what day they're going to end up getting a quarterback.
How many of those quarterbacks are in the conversation? Because Shedeur was considered the clear-cut number 2 quarterback in this draft class behind Cam Ward. Then Jackson Dart's name seemingly gathered a lot of steam. Now Jalen Milroe allegedly has a private workout with the New York Giants this week as well. I'm a fan because I watched him in a playoff run, even though he had a bad combine, of Will Howard. There's a lot of different potential outcomes for a lot of these different quarterbacks. Are you saying that the teams are viewing it the same way? Is there a set list on who's above where, or it's kind of scattered across the board?
Unlike any other year, it's wide open. And I think the Kenny Pickett year is unfair to these guys because I think this is a better class than that. And that was Kenny Pickett and Malik Willis and what was his name from Cincinnati?
Ritter.
Ritter. That was that draft class, and those guys kind of fizzled out. This year's draft class, like, I spoke to a GM who I really trust and is really good, and he's like, well, if you're looking for the best pure thrower of the ball, it's Tyler Shuck out of Louisville. And I'm like, Tyler Shuck, and I'm looking at my list, and I'm like, oh, okay, and I'm looking at this list here on your board, and there are several other names, and Tyler Shuck's not one of them. Another GM I was talking to over the weekend, as I'm watching the Masters and just texting everybody and on calls about the draft, and he's like, I could easily see Milroe going late first. He's like, that's the kind of deal where you have a starter already, and then you put Milroe in for some subset packages, and then 2-3 years, who knows? Jalen Milroe's your guy, and he's been learning for a year, and of course he can run the ball. He ran a 4.3 40 at his pro day, and he's got an awesome arm, and he's a winner, and he's about it. Like, he is a great leader. The same conversation on Milroe is, well, he was benched against South Florida a year ago, and this is where you're at. So I don't think it's a sure thing that Shedeur is the second quarterback taken. I would imagine that's what's going to happen. I would assume that's going to happen. I don't see Jackson Dart or Shuck or Milroe going before Shedeur, but anything can happen with this class. And we could look at 2 quarterbacks taken in the first round. We could look at 4 quarterbacks going in the first round. And that's not me pleading the fifth and being like, I don't want anything on my hands. I am just telling you that is what's being discussed with teams. But different than other years, they're not banging down my door to be like, what are you hearing? Like, do we need to do something to get Shedeur? It's not like anyone's doing flips over any of these other guys.
Greatest mock drafter in the history of mock drafting. We're talking to Peter Schrager. Obviously has, tip of the cap to you as well, sir. I don't have a hat on, but I would if I could. Has inside conversations with every team. That's why his mock draft is so spectacular. Sounds like question marks and chaos everywhere next Thursday night. Go ahead, AJ.
Shregs, yeah, we're all going to be watching to see what happens with Shedeur. Have you heard, is there any kind of like basement of where, like, hey, if he gets to this point, someone's definitely going to take him? Is there a number we've seen?
And here's the thing. He had a really good meeting with Pittsburgh last week, and that lasted like 5 hours. And he met with Arthur Smith. He met with Mike Tomlin. He went around the facility. So like that to me seems like a good backstop. Like at worst comes to worst for Shedeur, like 21 would be a really nice place for him to go. It would be a really good situation considering the weapons, the organization, the culture, the city, of course, that you guys know so well. But, you know, the Giants are going to this private workout, and Schefter broke that news last night. That this is not just window dressing. Here's the deal. The Giants had 13 different people at his pro day. So if you had it wasn't just 2 of them, 13. They had him in for a top 30 visit. Then they took him out to dinner. Joe Schoen himself went to multiple Shedeur Sanders games this year. Joe Schoen went to this is the guy we love. But that doesn't mean he's going 3 to the Giants. What that could mean is the Giants get Abdul Carter out of Penn State, number 3. And then if Shedeur starts slipping out of the top 10, out of the teens, maybe that's when they pull the trigger and they say, you know what? We really feel comfortable with this guy as our quarterback. We might not want him at 3, but we like him at 15, 16, 17 in that range.
Okay, very fascinating on the quarterback conversation. Shedeur obviously going to be chatted about because of his family, because of everything he was able to accomplish at 2 different schools, but a lot of attention to 2 different schools. Now he's getting his jersey retired at Colorado. Everybody's real pumped up about it on the internet. Jersey retired. That means something magical had to have happened, and he sold that building out alongside another guy that those Giants people might have been watching at all those games and practices. Go ahead, D-Bud.
Yes, his teammate, Travis Hunter, obviously the Heisman winner. What are you hearing about the people you talk to in the know, what position he will primarily play once he gets to the NFL? I know I've heard him say he still wants to play both ways, but what are you hearing as far as once he gets drafted, what position he'll primarily line up at?
There's a difference of opinion. I spoke to one team who said, I put him at wide receiver. He's the number 1 wide receiver in this draft, and he's got unlimited potential, and he is so raw at the position, D-But. They say that this guy, he's just scratching the surface. Like, his route running is not as precise as someone who's been doing it his whole life. And if you were to put him on the board with, like, Malik Neighbors and Marvin Harrison last year and Roma Dunze, you wouldn't even put him in the same conversation side of it. And he is by far, bar none, the best defensive back in this draft. However, can you at number 2 justify, I'm going to put him on the field at both positions? I'm going to have him as our number 1 or 2 wide receiver and then also have him play defensive back. You can if you draft him 2nd overall. This guy played 120 snaps a game last year. I mean, Charles was like, I played 30 snaps, the season. Like, it wasn't the same thing. This guy's doing stuff that is unprecedented. The last time we had a true 2-way player at those positions was Roy Green in the 1981 St. Louis Cardinals.
Oh, he was a dog.
He was a dog, but he came in and played that after years of safety, moved to wide receiver. We've never had a prospect coming out. So I honestly feel that there is a chance that he, in week 1 of the NFL season, can play both defensive back and be your number 1 corner and be your number 1 or number 2 wide receiver. And that is a legitimate possibility. That is how spectacular and rare this prospect is. Oh, and by the way, great freaking kid. Everyone says when they meet him, he's about the right stuff. He is everything you want in a prospect. Home run.
Okay, so we heard originally, I think it was Schefter said that the Browns are taking a quarterback at number 2.
Mm-hmm.
Browns are taking a quarterback at number 2. That was like a month ago, 2 months ago, whatever it was, before all the draft cycle kind of takes place, before all the meetings and everything. Now it's almost like if Travis Hunter's available and your team doesn't take him, you're an idiot. Is that kind of the view in Cleveland? And then if that is the case, Flacco's his quarterback in Cleveland with Travis Hunter, or does that lead to the Kirk Cousins move that everybody kind of is assuming is going to take place from Atlanta to Cleveland?
Well, let's put Travis Hunter in Cleveland now. If we were to pencil him in, and you say, "Oh, Joe Flacco," and we could have our thoughts about Flacco.
I love Joe Flacco. It did not work in Indianapolis, but I love Joe Flacco. I have his cleats. here.
There you go.
I
There
even
they
have
are.
Joe Flacco's cleats here. They move. They move with it, rock with it, lean with it, with the grass. Okay, Flacco wasn't great with the Colts, but with
He
the
was
Browns,
not great with the Colts.
Talking-
Guess what? He wasn't good with the Jets. He wasn't good with the Broncos.
He didn't get an
The
opportunity.
one place that
but
he
he
was
was
good.
great with the Browns. Took them to the playoffs.
Whoa.
He was great. He was great with the Browns, and he was great with Stefanski. And if you tell me that you have Flacco throwing the ball 40 times a game deep, and he's throwing it to Travis Hunter, Jerry Jeudy, and David Njoku, you could compete. You could play. That said, you're not tied to Flacco. You're not tied to Pickett. In that you could take Hunter at 2. And you could trade back into the first round with this draft. I'm telling you, there are not these home run plays where like, I will not move out of 11 or I will not move out of 12. It's not like that this year. There is a lot of parity when you're talking about after prospect 4 to prospect 30, and you could justify any of them. So if you need a quarterback and you really like Shedeur Sanders and you're Cleveland, you could probably get both of them. You could do what Houston did and not have to give up the farm to do it, but you could take your number 1 defensive player and your number 1 offensive player, and you can get both of them in this draft. I think back to the Lamar Jackson draft. It's almost ancient history now, but they took Hayden Hurst with a pick 22nd overall. They took a tight end. And then DaCosta moved up, and then they went up and they got Lamar at 32nd because they saw a window to go get this guy. That could be Cleveland, where they're like, we have our quarterback. We could compete with Flacco or Pickett. We could compete. We could get it. We could. I don't know if they're going to win anything. They could put a football team on the field. If you want to worry about quarterback and you don't have to take one at 2. And I think where Adam was in the beginning of the month, it was like they're going to probably get a rookie quarterback at some point. Since then, things have changed. Joe Flacco is signed, and also I think the quarterback class is not viewed as one of those where you need to take the guy at 2.
Okay, on that note, when you're talking about moving back in with a couple different teams, Ty has a question for you.
Yeah, in terms of trades as a whole, Schrags, what are you hearing? Like, how active do you think we're going to be? Field, Yates, and Mel Kiper in their most recent mock draft had the Browns trading back up to 29 to get Jackson Dart. We heard Dan Morgan say today, like, hey, listen, we're open for business. We're listening to calls if anyone wants to come up. And then in Field and Mel's mock draft, they've had a bunch of different other trades mocked. Do you think that's just like for the fun of it, or are you expecting there to be quite a bit of action on draft night?
When we were in Vegas that year for the draft, I think there was like 15 trades in the first round. I asked a head coach, I said, what are you hearing? Do you think it's going to be one of those? And he said, this is the stick and pick draft. I go, okay, well, that's not as exciting. He's like, I don't see the prospects where people are going to be jockeying in the first round to go up and get players. The quarterback position makes it interesting. So there are those sweet spots, right? New Orleans, obviously, if Derek Carr is not going to be there, there's a need at quarterback, unless you're going to just roll out Rattler and say, we'll roll the dice and then maybe get Arch Manning next year, which who knows, could be a possibility. But 9 seems like a spot, a pressure point for that. And of course, the Steelers or the Giants or the Browns could be teams that are maneuvering to move up and make that pick. I look across this list of logos though, and like I don't see the Raiders taking a quarterback. They signed Geno to an extension. It's like they're not picking him to only have him there for 1 year. And you go across the board, it seems like everyone's pretty much spoken for. So Steelers, Browns, Saints, and I would put in I would probably say the Jets are a possibility to get back in the first round if they're desperate to get a quarterback or they want to have one in addition to Justin Fields. That's kind of what you're looking at. And to me, there's not enough burning hot desire to move up to get one of these quarterbacks where we're going to see a ton of jockeying to do so.
Okay, you mentioned a team there, the Raiders. One player has been mocked to that team basically since the beginning. He will be joining us here in a matter of a few moments. Connor has a question for you.
Yeah, Strays, you said Ashton Jeanty is one of the 3, blue chip players. Do you see him going then, to the Raiders at 6? Do you see him dropping at all? Or do you think he is one of those guys that you can kind of bank on going in that top 10, top 7 area just because of how nasty he is?
I would start with 5 at Jacksonville, and I would say Liam Cohen comes in here, and Liam Cohen is an offensive guy.
4.
And they have that 4 at the Patriots could be a possibility, especially if Josh wants to get the offense going. Like it could go that high. And then you just look at the classic argument of, do you want your defensive tackle of the future? Do you want your offensive line of the future? Or do you want this stud running back? It's an age-old debate. Where do you draft the running back? When do you draft the running back? I'll tell you this. the last two running backs to go in those early picks were Bijan Robinson and Jahmyr Gibbs. I think those guys worked out pretty well.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, and you look at it, Bucky Irving led the all rookies in rushing last year. It was a 4th round pick. Tyrone Tracy led was second in rushing. He was a 4th round pick. So it's a question of appetite, but this guy is special. He's everything anyone could have wanted in a running back. It's just the fit and whether or not that team needs to add a running back and wants to add a running back over other positions.
You talk about the rookie running backs doing well. I'll just tell you, Saquon Barkley was the top pick, and he did A-OK with the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah.
And is the run game becoming much more prevalent because of what the Eagles did? I would say yes. Excited to see what Genty is able to do. Excited to chat with him here in a few moments. Last question for you, Shregs, here from AP Tone.
Yeah, Shregs, I want to talk to you about the big news this morning on Jalen Ramsey. Chris Greer just said that the team, confirmed that they decided to part ways. Ramsey did not request a trade, but the decision was made in the best interest of all parties. And then on top of that, they asked him if Tyreek Hill could also be traded, and he said, "That is not anything we're pursuing. Who knows? If someone wants to come and give me 2 first-round picks, we'll consider it." So I'll just let you comment on what's going on down in Miami.
A few off seasons ago, we were talking about the Dolphins as a Super Bowl contender and a team that right there away from the chip. And now it seems like that same group that they brought in, a lot of those veterans, Tyreek and Jalen Ramsey and, Chubb and all these guys. It's like, all right, well, we missed that window maybe. Jalen Ramsey is still due $21 million from whatever team ends up trading for him because the Dolphins paid him his $4 million guarantee. Like, that's a big price tag for a guy who is very accomplished, but is also, probably on the latter 9 holes of his career, I would imagine. So fascinating to see what the market is for a Jalen Ramsey and what team is willing to pay him that money, because I would imagine they'd want to restructure that deal.
Who do you think he ends up with, buddy?
Oh, I don't have a team yet. And that's the thing. It's like these veteran guys are, hey, I'm looking to, view a trade, and these teams dangle these names out there. I watched Cooper Kupp, be dangled and then not be traded and end up going to Seattle as a free agent. Like, these things happen in the league, and veteran players like Ramsey, they deserve better, but this is how it goes sometimes. And, you turn that corner at 30 and all of a sudden you think everyone views you in one way, or we do view you in one way. And then that number comes creeping in, and suddenly you feel like, oh my gosh, it's pretty humbling. And it could be a bitter pill sometimes.
Well, I'll tell you what, if he wants to come to the Colts, we'll certainly have him.
No doubt. He still could play.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And
Pat, can I say something real quick? Yesterday I'm watching on my phone all these very esteemed, famous women go to space, and I'm thinking to myself, laughing, can your crew go to space?
No.
Can we get this group to space?
You ever read what Bill Shatner said?
Yeah, those ladies have a lot more courage than we do, bub. I will tell you that.
Wouldn't go?
No. What are you talking about? I need to see that thing at
We
least
can pretend like we did.
100, 150 times. I need to see success on a regular basis. That's why the courage it takes to sign up for that, I think, next level. I don't know if we have it, Shregs. You would go, it sounds like.
No, hell no, I can't. I mean, my feet, I don't skydive. I don't go on roller coasters. I am a complete you-know-what when it comes to that stuff. But you guys seem like you do anything.
I don't know what you're talking about. There's a couple words started in my head.